I'm Chris Sorrell. I'm the AI Advisory Practice Lead here at Catalyte. Today I'm joined by Jun Wang, our CTO, and Jason Foster, one of our principal architects in our data science group. And today we're going to be talking about beyond generative AI. And by that I mean, what more is there to AI than OpenAI? How does AI fit into our business more broadly? What do we mean when we say AI? And what's the right fit? So here at Catalyte, it's really important for us to make sure that we're providing the right sized solutions to our customers, and that means understanding the right technologies, the right costs, what's appropriate for their organization, and makes the most sense for their budgets and their users. So I've brought the two smartest people I know in Catalyte in to help me talk about this conversation, and I'm really excited to get started. All right, thanks for joining me today, gentlemen. I'm really excited to talk about AI. Catalyte has been doing a lot of innovation around AI, and we're excited to be in the space. Today we're going to talk a little bit about generative AI. It's obviously the largest conversation we're hearing, but we think it's more than just generative AI, and we want to talk maybe about more broadly how AI is affecting industry and how do we look at it more holistically. So with that said, I think maybe we could start with a real basic question, which is, what is AI? We talk about it a lot, and everybody's got some idea of it, but maybe we can take a really high level. What do we want to call AI?
Great topic, Chris. I think a lot of people talk about AI these days, especially in the media. People talk about people think this is just generative AI and immediately goes into ChatGPT, large language model, or whatever else. In my mind, whenever I talk about AI, I sometimes use interchangeably with machine learning, predictive analytics, building a model, predicting things. In general, like AI has been there since, I don't know, maybe almost 100 years ago. Artificial intelligence is just, in my mind, anything that is not human intelligence. If you stretch a little bit, like a calculator can be considered as AI. So there's a full spectrum of like some sort of automation, some machine prediction, machine deciding things for human, all the way to today's generative AI to sort of generate the image or generate a video on demand with a prompt. And with that wide of a spectrum, there's so many things that we can continue to improve on, versus focusing on just one single part of it. And some of the older generation of AIs, if you may, have a lot of potential that we can leverage the newer technology to make them better.
Because even discovering the way that data is organized is far better done by a machine a lot of times. People see those self-driving cars on the road. I mean, that's another great big example of stuff that's not GPT, like you're mentioning.
And I think I saw, actually just last night, I was looking at an example where I think it's OpenAI is using their older models as verifiers for their new models. And so to your point of using earlier technology in ways that are supportive of innovation and expansion. And I think that's an interesting point, because we, I think, sometimes lose focus, because what everybody sees is ChatGPT or some, really just the natural language processing component of it, and that's it's remarkable because that's how we think and that's how we engage. But there's so much more going on behind the scenes, and I think there's a tendency to anthropomorphize in the sense that we think about these things thinking the way that we do, but they don't.
Yeah, a good example of that is how people still hate autocorrect on their phone, and that's still the same kind of natural language processing that has put those things together. That word prediction, is this the word that I think you mean? And often it's really, really wrong. And I'm always surprised at like, how can you prioritize that word over the word the or something like that, right? It's just it's crazy sometimes.
This generation of large language model is going to make that better, but it's computationally a little bit more intensive. On your phone, it's your phone is more likely to get heated up. And my speculation is some of those may be just computational costs, like battery life. You don't want to spend all your energy calculating what the next word is. So there is a lot of progress that we can make. On the other hand, I think the industry probably owe a lot of thanks to OpenAI and ChatGPT to sort of really popularize the concept. And then I think in several years ago, when you try to sell a chatbot to an organization, it's a challenge. People don't really know and trust, but nowadays everyone sort of have personally used it, and then now understand what this modern generation of AI can do. People are likely a lot more receptive to sort of AI adoption.
So I like to think about generative AI. I keep referring to it as similar to the speech center of the brain or the language processing center, in that typically its application is around language. It's understanding language, processing, and producing it. But there are other types of AI, obviously things like document intelligence or computer vision and speech and language, like you talked about. And so I think where I've kind of landed is that most non-trivial problems need more than one type of AI to be solved. And so what do you think about those type of hybrid architectures?
I'll take this as an opportunity to talk a little bit about something that I've been thinking quite a bit recently. Is like the modularized solution versus systemic solutions in terms of AI adoption. The organizations want to do, now we're an AI company, we're all in AI. Like, where do we start? I think the typical way of doing it is really a modularized solution, like one function, like one specific thing that you do. And then these days, you can, generative AI, you can now replace a copywriter or at least significantly enhance the productivity of a copywriter through some sort of a large language model implementation. And then no one else needs to change anything. We just have a better copywriter. And then, Illustrator, same thing. And then chatbot interfacing with the customer support, the same thing. And then that is probably a little bit more narrowed into like one or small number of modular solution. What is a harder problem to solve, and I really look forward to see how the industry evolve from that, from what we have today, is when we adopt AI, how do we create a systemic solution that fully unlock the value of the modern AI, and then do we reorganize the department? Do we hire a whole different kind of a talent? Do we shift resource from one thing to another? Do we reorganize, physically? Do we even relocate to a different location? Like, a lot of those are much bigger problems, and I think there is a place for AI to play there too. Talk about the language function and the executive function as well. I think in some cases, I look forward to, probably not necessarily today, but GPT-4 is sort of getting there. AI can play a role as at least a co-pilot for executive function for the decision makers there as well. So if plugging artificial intelligence in multiple parts of the organization and eventually co-design a new system, it's going to be actually a lot more efficient than just modularize replacing some things to sort of get a little bit incremental productivity out of it.
But it is a good way for him to modularize those things. It's a good way for that technology to penetrate your business a lot better. Because if there's something very specific, you can see it kind of trickle down into different places in the organization, and then you start getting excitement around some of that stuff, and you can the business can see itself where else those kinds of technologies can apply.
Yeah, and I think pilot programs or early adoption in an organization where you want to be able to measure success, you want to manage risk, you want to look at, is there a way to identify a return on your investment? Going large scale and saying, here's AI, can really confound that. And so having those narrow scope, incremental improvement pieces can certainly make it easier to culturally and technologically adopt AI.
Yeah, and also identify areas where you're weak in terms of your data or in terms of the things that you're going to train your model on or build it on. So if there are other kinds of changes that you need to make, it's important to get those identified so that you can continue to improve and get feedback on those models.
So when you talk about the sort of the systemic idea, my mind goes to things like Copilot 365 or these more what I call productivity AI platforms. And when you kind of peek behind the scenes, they're very complex. There's a lot of orchestration happening in the back end. And of course, from the user's perspective, it's largely a natural language interface asking, can you summarize the last 5 emails about this or what the conversation has been? But they are, remarkably complex in terms of what they have to index and what they have to assess and how to protect and respect governance and data policies. And so I wonder sometimes with that if there have to be so generic that they can't be really well tailored to an organization where, because we all want, obviously, Jarvis or, some agent that's going to solve every problem and knows how to do everything. But at the point we're at, it's that one size fits most, it feels like.
I guess the industry still is a little bit divided on this. I think on the one end, at least in the past several years, people have been trying to make like specialized large language model. For example, like I think Bloomberg at one point created finance GPT or something to sort of try to train a whole bunch of based on their own proprietary data to train a specialized finance model. And then once GPT-4 rolled out, it turns out the specialized model cannot compete with the generalized model. And then sort of there is an argument that people are making that larger, like the scaling law itself, the larger model always win and then beat the specialized model. On the other hand, as you pointed out, you cannot have like the Jarvis of the world that's solving your tiny specific problems. That feels like overkill. We haven't really talked about like the cost of running those models, even if the API is cheaper, to sort of fit that into your organization, fine-tuning those are like really, really costly stuff. So there are like a variety of technologies implemented there. I think like at this stage, the jury is still out there to sort of, do we need a huge model and then somehow fit into individual use cases, or do we have, I don't know, a mid-sized model fine-tuned, or do we have a small language model sometimes to solve a specific modularized solution? I think maybe the answer is all of the above, and we'll decide which one it goes.
The larger ones, you also have to consider the sources of some of the data for those things, because if you're training them, or if you're training those models on things that are not very, I don't know, reliable, right, then they're going to be more likely to make mistakes. But it's also a good way to kind of hone in on which model you need. So maybe you use those larger ones to answer larger questions, figure some of those things out, to kind of try to find a path through the rest of them to find the specific models.
Yeah,
and to answer the question.
And I think there's a lot of really use case analysis that you have to do. There's some really specific types of use cases that simply don't need a GPT-4o model. They don't, and the cost is prohibitive. It's not necessary. And a small language model like a Phi 3 or something. And if you just look on Azure, for example, the cost difference is orders of magnitude cheaper to do like a Phi 3 model than it is to run an OpenAI one. And so I think there's an important task of right sizing to your use case. And there may be a path, a maturity path that looks at expanding or using larger models as you need. But I think, especially starting with a point solution to a problem, it feels like the best way to do that is to narrow the window and the scope and just find the thing that's going to be the most cost effective that meets your business need.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think even if you start with a large model these days, even if you don't want to sort of do any sort of fine tuning or customization, like at the minimum you do some sort of prompt engineering, right? And then as you grow bigger and bigger, like your prompt token is going to probably run out of a token limit, or become ridiculously expensive. Every single thing you do is like, I don't know, 10,000 tokens to sort of start with a simple instruction. At that stage, you should move on to something that's a little bit more customized, so that if you get the long-term use out of it, it's probably more cost-effective.
Sure. So is there anything that organizations should do first to start with if they're going to do a hybrid approach or a modular approach? Where do they start if they're at sort of step one of adopting AI?
I think two competing thoughts in my head. One is definitely modularize the solution is a little bit easier. If you have something that you're doing today that you think, oh, this thing can be done by AI or can be significantly enhanced if you have some sort of modern day artificial intelligence to enhance your decision. It doesn't even have to be generative AI. One example is like fraud detection, for example, right? This is probably an older generation of analogy, but like, you used to have underwriters like looking at from insurance companies to sort of decide how much premium you pay, and then these days it's largely replaced by some sort of predictive modeling. The whole insurance industry have largely solved that problem. But still, you have like a human reviewer. Like in a borderline case, I think more and more we can replace that human reviewer by enhancing the AI to sort of make better prediction. It's not necessarily generative AI, but it's modularized, right? You have some humans make that decisions, and then now you can enhance that human's productivity by adding another of, again, I use interchangeable like AI, machine learning, model, predictive analytics to sort of do all of that. But on the other hand, the reason why I hesitated a little bit in the beginning is it also depends on where the organization is at. So a lot of time we talk about AI, as if you can just do AI, right? In a lot of times, and I personally, talk to a couple of friends of mine who runs companies. Like some of them are not necessarily in a place where they can just say we are now all in AI because digitization of your company information, going to the cloud, creating or archiving the data or converting the data into a format where the modern generation of AI have an easier time to process. Like even if we talk about sort of AI absorbing data, like these days a lot of the challenges of absorbing the data is like a lot of the text data is in PDF format. And a lot of effort is actually just to sort of convert PDF, convert those tables, convert those graphs into bits of information that actually is easier for the AI to understand. It could, but when you have a bunch of PDFs and then you have the AI that receive text and images, that process is actually where some of the more sort of sophisticated architecture is talking about. And then if you move that further upwards, what if you have, all you have is paper, right? Yeah. So companies adopting AI like modularized solution, and then on the other side talk about what is upstream dependencies. In my mind, it's typically just data and the computational infrastructure.
Yep. And that's true across the board for whatever data you're going to use for any of the models that you're going to try to put together. You really have to make an assessment of what you have. But even more fundamentally, the way that you kind of started with that, with your responses is essentially that you have to know what you want to find. You have to know some questions. You have to have some things that you want to know about your business that you don't currently know, or that you need to do better at, or feel like you can do better at, or what am I missing? Where am I missing opportunities in my business? Where am I missing? And where do I have customer churn? Where do I have poor sentiment? Where do I have all these other things that can help me just from a pure business perspective? You have to make an assessment of all of where your data is, what questions you want to have answered, and then where's your infrastructure, and how difficult is it going to be for me to get to the point where I can do that exactly.
And sometimes they probably need someone to hold their hands in terms of exploring. Like again, the media portray AI to be like you can do everything, or I don't know, or portray it as like a lot of risks. Right. So people are hesitating. I think have someone who can hold their hand to say like, here are the things that we can do, here are the things that we cannot do, here are something that's upcoming in terms of technology evolution, and then we can decide which place is a good place to start up, or we decided most of the effort as of this moment is to sort of get your company into sort of AI ready. And I think that itself is a worthwhile conversation.
Great. So I think this has been a great conversation. Obviously, I think there's a tendency in industry to either trivialize, what the problems are that AI has to deal with, or throw up their hands and be very afraid. Like you said, there's risk, and we don't know what the risk is, and it's all uncertain, and so let's put on the brakes. And so to your point, I think there's that middle ground, and it really starts with engaging with experts who understand the space, who understand the real complexity of the problems you're trying to solve. Your example of a PDF sounds easy until you have to identify the location and images in relationship to text and
split into different pages. Exactly. And so on. Yeah.
So I think that piece of engaging with experts who can right-size the challenge, understand where the risk lies with it, and then really come up with a solution that's modular and measurable is a great first step. And as that's starting, there's of course the looking at a maturity path or a glide path into more complexity and what that looks like over time.